For most people, childhood memories are like a sun-drenched film, full of endless summer days and bright, clear laughter. But for me, there is a summer that never ended. It's not a film, but a scar. A scar that never heals, one that always throbs with a dull ache whenever night falls. It is a memory that, instead of fading with time, has only grown sharper, gnawing at my soul with the most primal kind of fear. That was the summer I turned 8, the summer I met her. And my life, from that moment on, was forever plunged into the 8-foot-tall shadow of a nameless terror. The story you are about to hear is not just a story. It is the confession of a survivor, a warning born from the deepest pits of a haunting. Every summer, my world would shrink to fit inside the small village where my grandparents lived in Japan. The summer I was 8 was no exception, as was our tradition. My parents would drop me off in my grandparents' loving care and then set off on a trip of their own. For me, it was paradise. As their only grandchild, they doted on me endlessly. The vast green garden behind their house was my personal kingdom. One sweltering afternoon, I was lying on the grass, lazily watching the clouds drift by. The sun was warm like honey, the breeze a gentle caress, a perfect, peaceful moment. And then, cutting through the silence, a strange sound reached me. Po, 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 po. It was unlike anything I had ever heard. A deep, steady and haunting sound as if someone were muttering to themselves. I sat up, looking around, trying to pinpoint its source. It seemed to be coming from the far end of the garden, and then I saw it. A white straw hat bobbing just above the towering wooden fence. It wasn't resting on the fence, but seemed to be floating behind it, and the sound was coming from there. Po, po, po. The hat began to move, and then a face appeared beneath it. A woman's face. But that fence was at least 8 feet high. How could a woman be so tall? I stared, stunned, trying to rationalize it. Maybe she was on stilts, or some kind of impossibly tall shoes. Then she glided away, the hat and the bizarre sound vanishing into the air, leaving behind a chilling silence. I ran inside, my heart still pounding. My grandparents were in the kitchen drinking tea. I sat down and told them what I had seen. At first, they just smiled until I imitated the sound. Po, po, po. Instantly, the air in the kitchen seemed to freeze. My grandmother's eyes widened in horror, a trembling hand flying to her mouth. My grandfather's face became terrifyingly grim. He grabbed my arm, his voice tight with a dreadful urgency. "This is very important. Tell me, exactly how tall was she?" As tall as the fence," I whispered, a vague fear beginning to creep. And he barraged me with questions, every word like a hammer blow. "Where was she? When? What was she doing? Did it see you?" I tried to answer, but my throat was tight. He suddenly bolted into the hallway to make a frantic phone call. I was left with my grandmother, and I could see her whole body was shaking uncontrollably. When he returned, his face was ashen. "I have to go out for a bit. You stay here with the boy. Don't take your eyes off him, not for a second." "What's happening, Grandpa?" I cried. He looked at me, his eyes filled with an infinite sadness. "You've been noticed. By Hachishakusama." With that, he rushed out the door. In the suffocating kitchen, my grandmother explained in a trembling voice. Hachishakusama, which means the 8-foot-tall woman, was an evil entity that had haunted this area for ages. It took the form of an unnaturally tall woman and made a po, po, po sound in a deep, masculine voice. Its appearance varied depending on who saw it. Sometimes a woman in a kimono, other times a girl in a white funeral shroud. But two things never changed: its horrifying height and that unearthly sound. She told me that it had long ago been trapped, by monks, sealed by 4 Jizo statues placed at the 4 corners of the village. But somehow, the seal had been broken. It had last appeared 15 years ago, and anyone who saw Hachishakusama was destined to die within a few days. When my grandfather returned, he was with an elderly woman. Her face was stern, but her eyes held a commanding presence. She introduced herself as Kei-san, handed me a crumpled paper charm, and said, "Take this, and do not let it go." They took me to my bedroom upstairs. The window was covered with newspaper filled with ancient script. In the 4 corners of the room were 4 small bowls of salt. In the center, a small Buddha statue sat on a wooden box. Kei-san sat me on the bed, her voice low and firm. "Listen carefully. The sun is about to set. You must stay in this room until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Do not, under any circumstances, go outside. Your grandparents will not call for you or speak to you. Remember, do not open the door for anyone." The door slammed shut, and the click of the lock sounded cold and final. I was a prisoner. I tried to watch TV, but fear consumed my thoughts. I must have fallen asleep. When I awoke, it was just after 1 in the morning, and then I heard it. Tap. Tap. A light tapping on the window pane. The blood ran cold in my veins. I tried to tell myself it was just the wind, or a tree branch. But the tapping continued, patient and steady. Then it stopped. Instead, a familiar voice called from outside. "The door. Are you okay? If you're scared, I can come in and keep you company." It was my grandfather's voice. I smiled, relieved, and ran to the door, but a cold chill shot up my spine and stopped me in my tracks. That voice, it was his. But it wasn't. Something was wrong. A grotesque imitation hiding behind a familiar facade. My eyes darted to the corner of the room. The salt in the bowls was slowly turning pitch black. Panicked, I backed away, my whole body shaking. I fell to my knees before the Buddha statue, clutching the charm tightly, and prayed desperately. "Please, save me from Hachishakusama." Outside, the imitation of my grandfather's voice vanished. In its place, that evil sound rose again. Right. Outside the door, po, 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 and the tapping began again. Tap, 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 tap. That was the longest night of my life. When the door opened at 7:30 in the morning, my grandmother burst into tears at the sight of me. My parents were downstairs, their faces gaunt with worry. My grandfather hurried me along. "Quickly, we have to go." A large black van was waiting outside. I was placed in the middle seat, surrounded by 8 men who were all my blood relatives. Kei-san sat in the passenger seat. My grandfather drove our car in front, and my father's car followed behind. The small convoy started moving, strangely. Slow, no more than 20 kilometers per hour. "This is where it gets difficult," Kei-san whispered and began to chant under her breath. And then I heard it again. Po, po, po. I squeezed my eyes shut, but through my eyelids I could still see it. A sliver of a white dress, gliding parallel to the van. It was Hachishakusama. It was running, yet it kept pace with us effortlessly. Suddenly, it bent down, and a face stared into the van. "Don't open your eyes!" one of the men beside me yelled. Clamped my eyes shut as tight as I could, gripping the charm. Then the tapping started, erupting on all the windows at once. Tap, 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 tap. The po, po, po sound grew louder, mixing with Kei-san's increasingly frantic chanting. The van felt like a tin can besieged by an unseen fury. And then, suddenly, there was silence. I think we're safe now," Kei-san breathed. Everything after that was a blur. My father explained that the men in the van were all relatives, there to confuse Hachishakusama. He and my grandfather had driven in front and behind to form a protective convoy. He also told me that one of the Jizo statues at the edge of the village had been broken, which is how the entity had escaped. It turned out I wasn't the first. A childhood friend of his had been noticed years ago and had simply vanished, never to be seen again. Other survivors had been forced to flee Japan, never to return to their homeland. More than 10 years have passed. I have never seen my grandparents again. All our contact was by phone. My grandfather died 2 years ago. In his will, he strictly forbade me from attending his funeral. A few days ago, my grandmother called. She told me she has cancer and misses me terribly. She wanted to see me one last time. Is it safe? I asked nervously. It's been 10 years, my dear, she said, her voice weak but warm. That was so long ago. You're a grown man now. It will be fine. Hearing her voice, I felt myself relax. Maybe she was right. Maybe it had forgotten about me. But what about Hachishakusama? I still asked, the name escaping my lips. The other end of the line went silent. A long, suffocating silence. And then, through the phone, a deep, horrifyingly masculine voice that I will never forget spoke. Po, po, po. The phone slipped from my hand, hitting the floor with a dry, hollow thud, but I couldn't hear it. In my ears, in my mind, only that ghostly sound remained, repeating like a death sentence that had just been pronounced. It had found me. After all these years of running, after all these years of deceiving myself that I was safe, it was still there, waiting. And perhaps it is also waiting for you. So the next time you see a towering figure gliding past at dusk, or hear a strange sound you can't explain, ask yourself, is it just the wind, or is it her call? Because once Hachishakusama has set her eyes on you, even if you run to the ends of the earth, you can never truly escape.